The studio lights were bright, but not brighter than the attention in the room. Prince Harry sat in the center seat in front of millions of viewers after months of silence. It was his first major TV appearance in over a year. The world expected a calm, thoughtful conversation about his new trauma recovery project for veterans. He adjusted his jacket and gave a polite smile as Joy Behar leaned closer with that half grin. She was famous for part mischief, part challenge. The crowd clapped, the camera zoomed in, and the hosts prepared for a soft, safe segment. But that wasn't what Joy had in mind. "So, Harry," she began, her voice playful but pointed, "how does it feel to be the royal who broke the monarchy and couldn't keep a podcast alive?" There it was. A pause filled the air. The crowd gave a mix of gasps and awkward chuckles, not sure if they were supposed to laugh or feel uncomfortable. Some shifted in their seats. The stage manager raised his hand, unsure whether to cut the segment or let it ride. Harry didn't laugh. He didn't flinch. He just looked at her steady, calm, and far too quiet. Seconds passed. Tension grew. Then, with a voice low and even, he said, "You don't ask that question unless someone told you to." The room froze. Joy blinked. Not expecting that, her practiced smile faltered. Just a crack, but enough for the cameras to catch it. The silence stretched long enough to feel like an alarm. Sonny Hostin coughed lightly, trying to reset the mood. "Well, what Harry means, I'm sure is," but Harry wasn't done. He leaned forward now, his fingers folded together, his eyes still locked on Joy. "This wasn't what we agreed on," he said quietly. "Your producers were clear. This segment was about trauma recovery and veteran mental health." Joy gave a nervous laugh, glancing toward the backstage area. "Come on, Harry, just a bit of fun." "Fun?" he asked calmly. "You call this fun?" Whoopi Goldberg, sitting at the far end, shifted in her chair, uncomfortable. She had seen many interviews go off track, but this felt different. Colder, sharper, not a celebrity meltdown, but something beneath the surface. Something controlled. Then, as if on cue, the producers cut to commercial. The studio lights dimmed slightly. The cameras moved away from the table. But the tension didn't leave. Harry leaned back in his seat and whispered, just loud enough for the hosts to hear, "You're not the first to be fed questions." Joy straightened. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting," he said. "I'm confirming." Backstage, one of the junior producers scrambled to mute the studio mics. Another ran toward the control room, waving a paper, something redacted in black ink. The lead producer stood frozen, staring at the screen, then gave the order. "No wide shots, keep it tight on Joy. Don't show Harry when he's not speaking." Inside the studio, Joy tried to recover. "Listen, Harry, no one's trying to attack you. It's just people want to know how you feel after leaving everything behind." "Is that what you think this is about?" he said. "Me leaving?" He turned to the audience, his voice louder now. "What if it's not about leaving?" "What if it's about what I took with me?" Someone backstage shouted, "Cut to ad, cut now." The feed went black. Across America, millions of viewers sat in front of blank screens, confused. Social media exploded. Hashtag, "What did Harry say?" started trending within 5 minutes. Clips of the interview, especially the moment he said, "You don't ask that unless someone told you to," spread like wildfire. No one could tell if it was real or staged. Journalists began digging. Who approved the segment? Why was the topic changed? And most of all, who was feeding Joy Behar questions? In a control room in New York, one assistant quietly sent a text to an unknown number. He didn't take the bait. What now? No reply came. Not yet. In his dressing room, Prince Harry sat alone. He looked tired, but not shaken. On the table, beside him was a manila envelope. Inside were printed emails, old military memos, and a photo of a young British soldier standing in a war zone. He glanced at his reflection in the mirror and whispered to himself, "They thought I wouldn't notice." Then he picked up the envelope, tucked it into his coat, and left the room. This wasn't the end of an interview. It was the start of something much bigger. The morning after the broadcast, the silence was louder than the show. Major networks avoided mentioning the interview. Headlines were cautious. Prince Harry's strange exchange on The View. One read. Awkward moments or something more. Another guessed. But social media wasn't holding back. Viewers posted clips, slowed down sound bites, evenly preed the seconds before the commercial break. The phrase, "What if it's about what I took with me?" hit nerves around the world in a quiet flat. In London, an investigative journalist named Amir Desai was already 3 hours into dissecting the interview. He'd watched it 5 times. Every gesture, every glance, every pause. He opened a secure browser and uploaded to freeze frames one of Joy Behar's expression, right before asking the monarchy question, and one of Harry's face as he answered. Then he opened a folder labeled Albion PHX Royal Code. Inside were flagged communications between a BBC producer and an anonymous US-based media strategist. The last time stamp was from 4 days before the interview. The message read, "Use the podcast angle. Push hard, it'll trigger him. Trust. Me still carrying guilt about Kabul." Amir's blood went cold. Kabul. It always came back to Kabul. Back in 2008. Prince Harry had served in Afghanistan under heavy secrecy. The press had praised his service. But no one had ever explained the classified operation known only as Citrine Protocol. Most records had vanished. Whistleblowers who tried to speak went quiet. And now, suddenly, he was the one hinting there was something hidden. Amir sent a secure message to a contact at the Mod. No subject. Just a question. What's buried under Citrine? Back in Toronto, Prince Harry sat in a quiet room at the back of a wellness center. His public schedule said he was meeting trauma recovery volunteers, but no press were allowed inside. Instead, one person entered, a woman in a gray coat and scarf. She introduced herself as Dr. Evelyn Hart, formerly of the UK Defence Psychological Services. Harry didn't shake her hand. "You worked under Major Hewson, didn't you?" He asked. She nodded once. "Until I didn't." He gestured for her to sit. Between them lay the manila envelope from the night before. Inside were files she thought had been destroyed, assessment reports, therapy logs, and 3 internal evaluations of a covert mental conditioning program used on British soldiers stationed in Helmand Province. It wasn't therapy, Harry said. It was memory control. Dr. Hart didn't deny it. We were told it was to protect operatives from trauma. But it wasn't just for healing. It was for silencing. Harry opened another page, one with his name. "You said I failed the conditioning." "You resisted it," she corrected. "That's not failure." Outside, his security team stood in silence. One of them received a call. The voice on the other end was American. "Your principal is being tracked. It's about to become a threat, too. More than the monarchy." The line cut. Meanwhile, Amir got a ping back on his burner laptop. From unknownary Citrine, look for Operation Vellum. They turned soldiers into witnesses, then made the world forget the crime. He opened a new search. Operation Vellum wasn't in the archives. But one reference appeared, an article from 2009 that had been retracted within hours. It was about an ambush gone wrong in Lashkar. A British unit had gone off-grid for 72 hours. When they returned, one soldier refused to speak. A week later, he disappeared. The article's author, Aisha Reynolds, a name that hadn't appeared in print since 2013. Amir's fingers froze on the keyboard. She was believed dead. But what if she wasn't? Back in Toronto, Dr. Hart handed Harry a flash drive. "There's one video left. They never deleted it. But if you release it, you'll make enemies in 5 governments." Harry took the drive. "I already have." That night, a new clip appeared online. Anonymous upload. No title. It's just 8 seconds of grainy footage. A desert, a convoy, and a royal voice's voice shouting, "Stand down. That's not the target." Static. The clip ended, but it was enough to remind the world that a prince wasn't just royalty. He was a witness, and witnesses remember. The next morning, the clip had reached 57 million views. No outlet had officially claimed it. No platform had verified it. But everyone knew the voice. And the desert in the background wasn't a movie set, was war. In a Pentagon briefing, U.S. defense analysts were already examining frame by frame. The general consensus, the clip was real. The concern: why now? Someone's building a timeline, one analyst whispered. And if he's got more footage, it's not just the crown that should be worried. In London, the Prime Minister called an emergency meeting with MI6. Their internal brief confirmed what Amir Desai had feared: Operation Vellum wasn't a rumor. It was a joint psychological operation designed to erase unsanctioned activity in conflict zones by rewriting the memories of elite personnel. Prince Harry was never supposed to remember, the MI6 director said. Well, the PM replied, he remembers now. Meanwhile, Harry boarded a private train heading toward Ottawa under a different name. In his coat was the flash drive. In his mind, the faces of soldiers who hadn't survived. And somewhere between memory and shame was a promise he made too. A man who died with a secret in his mouth. The man was Sergeant Kieran Dale. In 2010, he'd written a letter to Harry. It never reached him. It had been intercepted, marked classified, and buried under Task Force Albion. Now, that letter was in Harry's hands. And its final line read, "If you can't speak for us, at least remember we tried." In a small safe house in Geneva, Aisha Reynolds removed a wig and sat quietly with her back against a wall. She had been presumed dead for 12 years. The 2009 article she wrote exposing the loss of a British platoon during a rogue NATO negotiation had cost her her name, her job, and nearly her life. But when she saw the 8-second clip go viral, she knew Harry was about to pull the last thread. So she reached out to someone she'd trusted long ago, Amir. Their encrypted chat was short. "Aisha, he's releasing fragments. Pete doesn't know about Basel. Amir Basel, the Red Archive. Aisha." Yes, everything they erased. Audio, video, and protocol memos. And proof that what happened in Helmand wasn't a failure. It was a transaction. Amir closed his laptop and left his flat with only one bag and a passport. If Basel was real, it wasn't just a memory vault. It was an international confession booth. In Ottawa, Harry sat down with a private trauma counselor. But the meeting wasn't for healing. It was cover. Inside the session room, he met with a contact from the International Criminal Court, a woman named Corinne, who had been investigating war crimes buried under NATO's shadow for over a decade. She brought a hard drive. He brought the flash. When they combined the contents, what emerged was chilling. A full mission dossier labeled Sable Phase 3. In it, photographs of British soldiers. Drone footage of a compound unlisted in any public records. And handwritten memos from a senior American intelligence officer. The Crown has agreed. Civilian identifiers to be scrubbed. Subjective reclassified as non-human assets. Deploy narrative immediately post-strike. Harry read the words over and over. Non-human assets. They were talking about people. That's why they never showed the bodies, he whispered. Corinne nodded. They didn't just erase history. They redefined it. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed through the counseling office. It's too sharp, too fast. Corinne pulled Harry toward the emergency exit. Outside, 3 men in black tactical gear approached the building. Not police, not government. Private Harry and Corinne escaped through the alley, flagged down a delivery van, and vanished into traffic. 2 hours later, every hard drive at the wellness center was wiped. Every CCTV feed was corrupted. The therapist who booked the room disappeared. That night, Amir arrived in Basel, and under the shadow of a closed-down Swiss bank. He descended into a vault of forgotten media. Reel after reel, audio logs, news cuts never aired. And one voice repeated across 5 tapes. A young British soldier. Nervous but clear. If Prince Harry ever sees this, tell him I kept the camera rolling. Amir's eyes widened. He copied the files and dialed Aisha. We have it. The footage that proves he tried to stop it. She replied, steady and cold. Then it's time we remind the world what a prince really saw. The footage began with static. Then a blurry shot of a tent, wind snapping the canvas, boots crunching over gravel. A British soldier adjusted the lens. His voice was off camera, trembling but focused. This is Task Force Echo, Helmand Province. It's February 22, 2008. Unauthorized. Camera feed. Operation Sable. Command refuses recording. I'm doing it anyway. The next frames showed a convoy of armored trucks rolling toward a compound. Dust, heat, tension. At the center of it all, a tall figure in desert fatigues, helmet tucked under his arm, walking directly toward the gates. It was unmistakable. Prince Harry, he wasn't smiling. His jaw was tight. His eyes kept scanning the ridgelines. Something felt off. Even in grainy footage, the discomfort radiated. Inside the compound, voices overlapped British, American, and Pashto. The soldier recording kept his distance, zooming from cover. Objective secured. Someone said dot, then Harry's voice cut through. This wasn't the plan. Where are the civilians? Silence. A shadow stepped forward tall. American accent? No insignia. CIA or worse. They were relocated. You weren't briefed on that. Orders changed. Harry turned, furious. Changed by who? This isn't an up. It's a delivery. The man didn't answer then. An explosion in the distance. The camera shook. The feed ended in a hidden suite above Basel's old financial district. Amir wiped sweat from his hands. He'd just uploaded the clip to 3. Encrypted mirrors, ready to release if needed. He wasn't sure which scared him more, what was in the footage, or the knowledge that it had been buried for 15 years. The evidence confirmed what Aisha had suspected all along. Operation Sable wasn't about enemy insurgents. It was about moving assets, weapons, maybe people. The lines were blurred. And Harry hadn't just witnessed it, he'd tried to stop it. Back in Geneva, Aisha sat in a dark hotel room watching the footage loop silently. She remembered 2009, when she first heard whispers of the mission. She had tried to publish a report. Me 6 threatened her family. The newsroom received a visit. Her passport was flagged, so she vanished. But watching Harry in that desert furious trade, she realized something. He wasn't breaking silence now because of duty. He was doing it because guilt never left him. Meanwhile, in Washington, an emergency call lit up the phone of a private contractor tied to a media suppression firm. He's activated public interest. The prince. It's real. What's the leak? The footage. It's from Sable. Then initiate blackout. Discredit all parties. Target Desai first. He's weakest. That evening, Amir walked back to his flat in Basel, unaware that he was being followed. He entered quietly, locked the door, and started prepping his next release on email from a 2008 EBC executive that read, "Do not run visuals of Harry and Helmand. Palace request. Focus on humanitarian angles only. Archive everything else under royal clearance for C." But just as he pressed save, a light flickered behind him. He turned. A man stood in his apartment. No weapon, no threat. Just a card placed. On the table, Royal External Security Field. Liaison, the man spoke quietly. "You're making this bigger than it has to be," Amir replied. "Maybe it's already too big." The man nodded, double quotes. "Then just know this Sable wasn't a rogue mission. It was a deal between more than just the US and the UK. If this goes public, it doesn't hurt just the monarchy. Burns NATO. Then he left, no threat, just a warning. Amir sat in silence in Toronto. Harry met again with Dr. Evelyn Hart. She brought a second flash drive. One he hadn't seen. After Sable, they evaluated you. Said you were too unstable to be trusted in? Further ops. Harry opened the file. Inside were psychological notes questioning his loyalty, his memory, his fitness to serve. But in the margins, handwritten in red, was a chilling note. If public learns he resisted Phase 3, recommend discreditation via media implosion. Target personal projects. Create narrative of entitlement and confusion. He looked up at her. They didn't just erase the mission, they rewrote me. Hart nodded slowly. And now you're rewriting yourself. That night, an anonymous whistleblower page published a full report titled Project Sable, The Royal Lie. With the footage, emails, and therapist logs embedded, it spread in hours. The palace denied everything, but by morning, a reporter in South Africa posted something new. A classified NATO log entry, Operation Sable Objectives, Non-Combatant Removal, High-Value Cultural Exchange, Royal Optics Neutralization. Report delivered to Windsor office. Approved by CO codenamed Regal. REGAL. The codename used for Prince Charles. Harry's father. It wasn't just a cover dash-up. It was family. Prince Charles, then the Prince of Wales. Now the king had signed off on Operation Sable, not as a figurehead, but as an informed participant. The document didn't imply ignorance or ceremonial distance. It placed him in the room alongside military advisors and intelligence liaisons. The signature was real. The codename wasn't clever. It was deliberate. Within hours, Buckingham Palace issued a tightly worded denial, calling the NATO log a fabrication and an insult to the integrity of the crown. But behind closed doors, internal crisis talks were already underway. Across The Atlantic, CNN's breaking coverage headlined, "Did the Crown approve a military misinformation operation?" The BBC aired nothing. Inside the BBC's central office, a senior editor handed a producer a pre-written statement. "We are choosing not to elevate conspiracy content." The producer looked at him in silence, then quietly started recording the meeting on his phone. Meanwhile, Prince Harry was moved to a secure private residence in Montreal, managed by neutral diplomats who owed no allegiance to either London or Washington. A silent nod from a Canadian defense attaché told him everything. "You're safer here for now." Inside the apartment, he sat with Dr. Evelyn Hart and Corinne from the ICC. Spread across the table were more pages from the Sable archive. This time with timestamps tied to specific mental health discharges issued after the mission. 32 soldiers, Corinne said. Each declared unstable, each removed from service. No appeals allowed, and 6 are now dead. Harry traced one name with his finger, Captain Liam Wren. "He was with me in that compound," he whispered. "He tried to stop it too." Hart looked over. "He's one of the 6. Harry's jaw clenched. Then he opened his phone and recorded a video and filtered unscripted. "This isn't about revenge, it's about reckoning. If we can send people to war and then bury them in silence, what exactly are we fighting for?" The video uploaded in under a minute. Within the hour, the Crown's legal team sent takedown notices to 3 platforms. None complied. By evening, the UN Office for Human Rights released a statement confirming an active review of whistleblower materials tied to multiple NATO engagements between 2007-2011. For the first time, they publicly named Operation Sable, a photo of Prince Harry's boots in the Afghan desert, timestamped and authenticated, ran on Al Jazeera's homepage with the headline, "Royal Witness, the Prince Who Refused to Forget." But as the world debated truth and legacy, Amir Desai was running. He'd left Basel after 2 unmarked cars appeared outside his hotel. In Zurich, he changed phones and switched trains 4 times. But at every terminal, he felt eyes. He reached out to Aisha. Her message was blunt. They're trying to bury us now. We publish or we vanish. Amir reached into his coat and unwrapped the last item from the archive, a sealed diplomatic pouch. It bore the insignia of the UK's Foreign Office. Inside was a typed memo. Dated 2013, marked eyes only. If Subject H becomes a threat, activate Protocol Windsor. Discredit through controlled interviews. Trigger emotional exposure. Undermine. Veteran credibility by shifting narrative to celebrity dysfunction. Maintain plausible deniability. It had been planned for a decade. They hadn't responded to his truths. They had anticipated them, back in London. A private meeting took place at Clarence House. The new king sat with 2 military advisors and a representative from a private media firm contracted through the Home Office. He's not attacking the crown, the advisor said. He's attacking the system that serves it. And what do you propose? The king asked coldly. Public sympathy is turning. If he wins, this argument of trauma becomes the story we lose control of the national myth. The king stood, slowly walked to the window and looked out at the rain dot. Then he said, then we must remind them who owns the story. That night, an op-ed appeared in one of Britain's largest tabloids. Harry's War, Fiction, Fury, and the Fall of a Wayward Son. It claimed he was hallucinating military records, suffering from displaced grief, and being manipulated by exiled radicals. But under the article, comments flooded in. We saw the footage. They're scared. He remembers too much, and that's the threat. In a quiet room in Montreal, Harry scrolled through the article. He didn't react. Instead, he opened a separate folder on his laptop labeled The Compound, Final Sequence. A single video remained. The last 30 seconds from the Helmand. Feed dot in it. A voice says, this ends with your silence or your sacrifice. Then Harry's voice replies, then I choose sacrifice. He stared at the screen for a long time. Tomorrow. The world would see it. The upload happened at 6 a.m. ES, Tino press release. No media contact. Just a simple post from a newly created channel titled Witness 1. The final footage from Helmand, 30 seconds long. No music, no cuts, no narration. It began with the interior of the compound blurry, chaotic, but real. The CIA operative yelling, the British soldiers hesitating, the tension thick. Then Prince Harry's voice, clear despite the sandstorm outside. This ends with your silence or your sacrifice. A beat of silence, then his voice again. Then I choose sacrifice. And in that moment, he turned his back to the operative and walked straight into the line of fire, not of bullets, but of decision. The footage ended mid-step as a deafening roar from a drone or an explosion cut the clip short. Within minutes, video spread across the globe. Newsrooms scrambled. Anchor scripts were ripped apart. Chirons changed in real time. Prince Harry footage confirms standoff during 2008. Mission New Clip suggests Royal tried to stop covert operation who ordered the strike. The palace remained silent. By midday, NATO held a closed door. Emergency session in Brussels. A leak from inside confirmed what many feared. The alliance was not just dealing with a rogue narrative. They were facing legal exposure. 6 member nations demanded an independent inquiry. 3. Fused. Tensions flared. And for the first time since the Cold War, the alliance felt fractured. In Montreal, Harry watched the reactions unfold not from a bunker, but from the back of a car parked near an abandoned airport hangar. Corinne sat beside him, tablet in hand, scrolling through legal briefings. They're spinning it, she said. They're going to claim it was edited, manipulated. Didn't blink. Let them. Corinne looked at him. This isn't just about Sable anymore. They're going to unseal everything. Mental health records, therapy transcripts, military logs, everything. They'll paint you as unstable, delusional, dangerous. Harry leaned back, closed his eyes. I can take it? She hesitated. And your family? He opened his eyes. They made their choice. In London, a private security council convened inside the cabinet office briefing rooms. Not all were government. Some wore suits with no badges, no titles. He's gone full adversary, said a man with a clipped accent. Publishing classified. Ops, threatening global alliances. Another leaned forward. We can still intervene. Discreditation isn't enough. We need containment, meaning digital takedown, account seizure. Bank freeze. Travel flag. The official from GCA nodded, already underway. But then came the shock. Sir, said a younger advisor, pale-faced, holding his phone, you should see this. A live stream was going viral. It wasn't from Harry, it was from Amir Desai, standing inside the old Basel vault. Amir faced the camera with a folder in hand. I'm not a soldier, not a royal, I'm a journalist. And I've just uploaded 4.7 gigabytes of military records. Verified footage and internal communications proving not just that Operation Sable was real, but that it was profitable. He placed the folder down. This isn't about one man's trauma. It's about how trauma was weaponized, sold, and buried beneath monarchy and media. Then he leaned closer to the lens, and to those watching from the Crown. From Langley, from Whitehall. You can't erase all of us. The stream cut after 9 minutes. But in that time, over 12,000 documents had been downloaded by users in 61 countries. It was done. The dam had broken. Inside the palace. Silence fell. The king sat alone, watching the footage replay on a tablet. Not speaking, not blinking. Then, at last, he said softly, he was never supposed to remember. Behind him, a secretary entered quietly. Sir, the American ambassador has requested an urgent call. Decline it, the king said. But, sir, I said decline it. He stood slowly, walked to the fireplace, and stared into the flames. Everything had changed. Back in Montreal, Harry's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Just one line, you started something, no one can stop now. He looked out the window. Rain tapped gently against the glass. Then he whispered to himself, good. Because the truth wasn't a scandal anymore, it was a revolution. By dawn, the world was no longer arguing if the story was real. They were asking what came next, overnight. Global headlines pivoted from speculation to confirmation. The Guardian ran with documents revealed decade-long cover-up of NATO-approved operation tied to British royal. Al Jazeera aired a 45-minute segment titled The Prince and the Protocol, How Truth Survived a War. And then came the tipping point. 3 families of deceased British veterans publicly filed a joint lawsuit in The Hague. Their sons had served in Helmand under Operation Sable. Each had been diagnosed with service-related psychosis, only to later die by suicide. One mother, holding a photo of her son in uniform, spoke through tears. They erased his memory, then erased his name. The footage, the files, the memo with Regal stamped across all of it was submitted as evidence. The world watched as the monarchy faced a moral tribunal unlike anything in modern history. In Toronto, Harry stood by a window, sipping cold tea. While Corinne read the early reports, you've just made yourself the most dangerous man in the West, she said. Harry didn't look away. I'm not dangerous. She tilted her head. It's not up to you anymore. A moment later, Evelyn Hart entered the room. She held out her phone with a live stream playing. A man stood at a podium in Berlin. Amir Desai, this time flanked by 3 international legal observers. The data we've released doesn't end with Operation Sable, Amir said. There were 2 follow-up missions, Sable Echo and Sable Phoenix. Both aimed to clean up not enemies, but mistakes. He held up a document stamped with a UN watermark. Under the 2009 Strategic Cultural Asset Directive, officials within NATO, including select Royal advisors authorized the removal of non-combatants labeled as cultural disruptors. Artists, activists, journalists. Targets were not threats. They were narratives. Aisha Reynolds, now confirmed to be alive and in Berlin, stepped forward next. She didn't speak from paper. She spoke from memory. I was labeled a narrative. Voice trembled. And now I refuse to be erased again. Inside the palace, the king met with the prime minister. No press. No prosos, there's pressure for a public address, the PM said. The Commonwealth is demanding answers. The king paced. If I speak, he said, I give it weight. If you stay silent, the PM replied, you give it fire. After a long pause, the king sighed. Then perhaps it's time I speak. Not as a sovereign, but as a father. Later that evening, the BBC aired an unexpected broadcast. The king sat alone in Windsor Castle. No flags, no advisors. Just a dimly lit room and a single camera. I have watched with great sorrow the events of these past days, he began. And while many claims remain under legal review, one thing is now inarguable. Truths have surfaced that demand reflection. He paused. And to my son, if he is watching, know this, though we may disagree on method, I see the pain behind your courage. And I grieve that it took the world's outrage to hear your voice. It wasn't a confession, but it wasn't a denial either. By midnight, the video had over 90 million views. Across Europe, protests erupted not against Harry, but in support of transparency. Veterans, journalists, human rights groups. Candlelight vigils appeared outside embassies. Chants echoed. Remember the forgotten? Nitrogen monoxide, more shadow wars. Harry spoke. Now you speak. In a safe house in Copenhagen, Harry sat with Amir, Aisha, Corinne, and Evelyn. No press, no speechwriters. Just 5 people who had once been silenced. We lit the match, Amir said. But what now? Harry looked at him. Now we build. Build what? Evelyn asked. A network. He replied. For whistleblowers, for soldiers, for storytellers. For anyone who was told to forget. He stood and walked to the window. They called it sacrifice. He looked back at them. Let's turn it into survival. Outside, snow began to fall softly across the rooftops of a city. Waking up to truth. History had changed. Not because of power, but because someone remembered Dan refused to be quiet.